All right, good evening, and we want to thank you for coming to our first of two sessions of State of the Church Part 1. I'm Pastor Gail, and I want to welcome you here and those of you who might be with us online. I am Pastor of Stewardship and Evangelism, and so I work with these wonderful people a lot here at St. Andrew, and so we thought it would be a great thing to come in and just give people an opportunity to hear how we're doing, what's going on, what we're working on, because it replaces the old, we used to do an in the know in our bulletins where we could provide information about giving or maybe attendance or other kinds of things that were important for people just to get a barometer on how St. Andrew was doing. So since we don't do that anymore, we thought this would be a great place to give you an opportunity to really have some face-to-face contact and be able to ask some direct questions to the people who are in the know. So to introduce to you our participants tonight, we have Jim Smiley, who is our president-elect. We have Steve Moan, who works with us. He's a facilitator for our finance team and also on the Endowment Committee. And Matt Gribben, who is on our council and is our liaison to our Benevolence Committee. At the end of our session, after we have all presented, we'll give you a chance to be able to ask questions if you like. Maggie Dede will have a hand microphone, so we'll ask that you wait for her to come and offer you, or make sure the mic is there so we can all hear your questions. And we'll also be inviting questions online. And the number for the texting, to text in your questions, will be at the bottom of the screen throughout the session. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and invite Jim Smiley, our president-elect, to begin.
Okay, thank you very much, Pastor Gail. It's good to see everybody here and I guess remotely to see everybody online. So thanks for coming to the State of the Church. As Pastor Gail mentioned, I am president-elect of the Church Council. The president is Eric Werlinger. He was unable to be here tonight, and as president-elect, I get to fill in for him. So I'm happy to be here and happy to do this. Some of you may know my wife and I came to St. Andrew a little over, probably 6-7 years ago now, and we have kind of taken a dive into the deep end with both feet. We're active in a number of things here at the church, and we really feel like we found our forever church home. So we're thrilled to be here. I'm got church council up on the screen, and I wanted to tell you who all is on the church council. First of all, I don't want to downplay Pastor Lilliard by having him at the very end, but he is certainly an active member of our church council. Eric Werlinger, as I mentioned, is president. I am the president-elect. Chris Hansel, Matt Gribben here, and Julie Hermanson are also on council. John Kirk is on council, Joy Altman, Lene Stoley, and Vince Thomas. So that's the makeup of the council. You may know that the council is elected for 3-year terms, and they are staggered terms. There are 3 new members elected annually, and the election takes place in the annual meeting, which is the 3rd or 4th Sunday, depending upon how the calendar falls in January, and then the new terms begin then. The 3 outgoing members this year are going to be Eric Werlinger, Chris Hansel, and Matt Gribben. They will leave the council. They will have served their full 3 years. And we will elect 3 new council members come the 3rd or 4th Sunday in January. There have been nominations taken. I know it was in the bulletin and online. There were nominations taken, and I know there are a number of candidates for the council. So if you want to have a voice in the council elections, come to the council meeting on the 3rd or 4th Sunday in January. Do we know if it's 3rd or 4th this year? I don't know off the top of my head.
Actually, it'll be the last Sunday, which is the 5th Sunday this year in January.
Okay, well, my slide's already wrong. So, okay, so it will be the 5th Sunday. That's when we'll have the election. Okay, I wanted to go back. Some of you may or may not know what the primary roles of the council, and some of you may or may not know that we actually have a constitution here at St. Andrew. And the roles of the council and the primary ones are defined as follows. The first one is there will be general oversight of the life and activities of the congregation. This means that we pretty much have free rein to delve into virtually anything that goes on within St. Andrew. The second, we will lead the church in stating the mission, stating long-range planning, and evaluate activities in light of that mission. Making sure that the mission is being followed and making sure that the church is going down the path toward solving all the issues that are brought up. The next one is to provide and oversee the administration of the congregation. This is a large church. There are a number of staff people, and there are a number of administrative details that need to be handled every day, and when we meet as a church council, we get reports from Gail and others on how the church is doing. The final one that I'm going to highlight today is to maintain supportive relationships with the pastors and the staff and help them annually evaluate the fulfillment of their calling and employment. We do an annual review of the pastor, Pastor Lilliard. That is usually done by the president of the council, and the other members of the council do have input into that. So that is the general. There are some other more minor things that are mentioned in the Constitution about roles of the council, but I'll stop there. We do meet with the pastors every month. I think I had the misfortune of coming on the council during COVID. So I think we've only met twice in person since I've been on council. All of the rest of the meetings have been on Zoom. But I think they have been just as effective, and we're looking forward to getting back in person as soon as we can. I know the last meeting, some of the people were there in person, some of the people were remote. Our meetings are usually on a Tuesday night, and we have a regular attendance and a regular agenda, and all the members of the council are present. The treasurer, Brian Shimley, is also at the meetings, as well as all of the pastors. The typical topics that we cover include the treasurer's report and the finance narrative. And Steve is going to go through those since that's his area of expertise here with the church, and he'll go through those in a couple of minutes. On the operations side, each pastor provides a summary narrative of what is going on in their particular area, and that narrative is sent out to all the members of council prior to the actual meeting, so we have time to go through it. It's usually sent on Sunday, and we have time to go through it, so we have adequate time to ask questions of the pastors during the meeting. It also serves, and one of the things I've found helpful, it serves as a sort of a record of everything that's been going on in the church, and that I think is extremely valuable and will be valuable to those people new coming in onto council as they get up to speed with their issues. So some of the major issues that we've recently discussed include, and some of you may have been here for the meeting here a couple of Sundays ago when we had a vote of the call committee. We had the call committee present their recommendation to find a pastor for serving in the children, youth, and family ministry. That was Pastor Sarah Fike. The group that was here approved it 74-1, if I remember right, was the vote. Still don't know who the one was. It wasn't you, was it, Steve? No, not Steve. So it was 74-1, and so Pastor Sarah Fike has been called, and she has accepted. And unless there's new information, the last I heard, it's going to be somewhere around the 1st of December. She will be coming to St. Andrew. We're all really, really happy to have her. She got glowing reviews from the members of the call committee. Other issues, some of you I'm sure have heard, most of you probably have, that Pastor Gail will be moving to part-time in, what do I have there? I missed one. Yeah, Pastor Gail moving to part-time in April of 2022. One of the kind of ahas for me when I got on church council was I had no idea how much Pastor Gail does for this church, and her shoes are going to be incredibly difficult to fill. I know Steve and I have had, since that's kind of his area of expertise too, the finance side, we've had some discussions about whether we're going to divvy up Pastor Gail's responsibilities, how we're going to do that, whether there needs to be a new hire, and if there is a new hire, when that will take place. So stay tuned for that. I know that there are people with differing ideas about how that should be done, and so that's something we'll be tackling in the next not too long. So. The parking lot, MTS owns our parking lot, and there's been a recent change of ownership at MTS. I know that there was a meeting today, and maybe, Pastor Gail, I'll let you fill people in on kind of what happened in the meeting today.
Sure. Mostly we wanted to just make sure we were entering into some dialogue with them. MTS has been a wonderful partner and neighbor with us, and so it's not as much that there are any concerns that there are issues, but we want to make sure we continue that strong relationship that we have had over the years. We own very little of what you see when we walk outside the door here. They own all of that property, but we have worked over the years to make sure we kind of care for the things that are important to us. We have a formal agreement, but we also are just doing some things where the agreement maybe is complicated, and it's just easier with our Steve Starks, who is our building manager, and the building manager over at MTS, plus their attorney and we all met today and said, just with a few tweaks and some things that are kind of questions for us, it's still going well. They are still in transition in finalizing their sale, so they have a lot of things still yet to be figured out on their side. So it was a great opportunity to be able to just say, here are the things that we just want to check in with you on. So we have agreed that we're going to, every 6 months, just have a conversation. The best way you keep your neighbors is to stay talking and good neighbors. And so we will continue to do that, and we'll invite others to participate in those conversations. But I guess more generally what I'd say is it's a good relationship, and we look forward to keeping it that way.
I think the good news is I think we're ahead of the game, especially since their sale has not been totally transferred yet, so good for Gail, and Steve also has participated in the discussions with MTS. So other issues we talk about: Spirit in the Pines, camping. We talk about all the early learning policies during the middle of COVID. We talked about mask or no mask and attendance and all of those sorts of things, but I won't get into all that because I think most of you have stayed recent with those happenings. Attendance, we've been averaging about 500 in person over the last month or two, and another 180 who are watching online at the time of the service, which is pretty good. And then there's all those who watch on YouTube later, if the timing of the services don't hit them absolutely right. So We think attendance is going well. We're obviously concerned about it, and hopefully get back to where people are filling up the sanctuary as soon as we can. I'm going to spend just a brief minute on technology. Hopefully, you all have taken advantage of some of the new technology options, streaming. You know, people I know are watching this live tonight. The YouTube channel, if you haven't subscribed to that and gotten all of the devotions and all of the programming that is done from St. Andrew on that, that's a wonderful way to keep in the know on all of the things that are happening. I think computers have been upgraded, and I think our technology is second to none. So I give a lot of credit to the staff for all of the ability that they've had to get our technology to where it should be. I want to take 1 second to talk a little bit about Staff Support Committee. I know almost all of you probably know Bob Webster. Bob is the chairman of the Staff Support Committee. We meet as he decides he wants to call a meeting, which is usually about every other month. Members of the committee, for those who don't know, are Eric Werlinger, Becky Johnson, Dale Riley, Doug Wiesner, Paula Jarris, Ron Muser, Ross Eichelberger, Sarah Hernandez, Pastor Lilliard, Pastor Gail, Maggie Deedy, and myself. And we, again, have been meeting usually over Zoom since the pandemic, but I think our last meeting, most of us actually made it in person. So, and we discuss issues that are mostly legal and mostly personnel. We talk about salaries, benefits, open positions, office moves, and other HR issues. So there's the names. I didn't advance the slide. And there's what we discuss. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Steve for the financial part.
Excellent. Well, good evening. Thank you for taking the time to be here. Again, I'm Steve Moen. My wife, Karen, who's here tonight. We've been members for almost 20 years at St. Andrew and really have benefited in so many ways from all the different ministries, especially for our two children who are now adults but have benefited from so many of the programs that St. Andrew offers over the years. So my goal tonight is just to give you a high-level sense for our financial governance at St. Andrew, to talk about the team that's in place to help provide that support, and actually give you a few numbers, just a couple, not too many numbers tonight, to give you a sense for the current kind of financial condition of St. Andrew and some of our key areas. So our team is made up of 8 different members of St. Andrew. We get together on a really kind of as-needed basis to, again, review, discuss, debate sometimes all the different financial matters related to St. Andrew. You know, we're very fortunate. This team includes some of the, most experienced financial leaders in some of the biggest corporations in the Twin Cities. So it's really a phenomenal team that volunteers their time to provide support and governance for St. Andrew. So when we get together, again, we spend a lot of time with Pastor Gail and with Maggie Deedy, again, reviewing the information that they've put together and then providing guidance. When there's issues where they need to kind of walk through different options, they can share that with us. We can talk through maybe some other ideas as well and just help them in overseeing the overall financial operations for St. Andrew. So during these the meetings, what do we do? I mean, the first is talking about just where we are from an overall financial condition. What is our current status? And I'll give you a preview. Our financial status right now is really strong. We are so fortunate to have a membership that is so generous in their time and treasures to support St. Andrew in so many different ways. From a more detailed perspective, we actually get into then the monthly treasurer's report that Jim mentioned and the financial narrative that Pastor Gail and Maggie put together and to review in detail what's happening. I'm going to cover that in just a little bit more detail in a minute as well, just to give you a better sense for when you hear Treasurer's Report, what do we mean by that? What's actually involved in that report? And then two other key areas where we spend a fair amount of time, the annual budgeting process, which is just getting kicked off. It's about a 3-month process where we review plans for the next year. So we're starting that right now with all the different department heads within St. Andrew. We'll walk through that, the goal being then presenting that final budget at the annual meeting on January 31st. In addition, from time to time, we'll be discussing some other kind of can be major issues that relates to kind of key initiatives, some different capital expenditures, and just again overseeing what's happening. Maybe it's on the capital appeal and how the spending is going against the projects that were discussed and that were being supported by all the different members. Let me just take a minute and talk a little bit more about kind of where we're at from a finance perspective as we sit here today in November of 2021. Again, thanks to the incredible generosity of our members and actually some non-members as well, we are on target to hit our overall giving goal in 2021 of approximately $2.44 million. So again, if I think about it from a business perspective, we need a certain amount of giving or revenue to cover the operations of the church. And so being in that type of position really is very important, and something that for longtime members know that that's not always been the case. So again, we're just very fortunate, thankful that from a giving perspective, we're in such a solid positioning and on target to hit our goals for 2021. It's also interesting, maybe one additional note on that, giving has changed from the traditional pledging and giving, at a worship service. Right now we're seeing a very high percentage of our giving being done online. In addition, people are now incorporating their giving into what I would call their overall financial planning as it relates to if they may have a donor advised fund or just other financial kind of planning related giving. And that even extends into potential estate giving and other major gifts that can be tough to budget for, but they are very, very helpful, again, in being able to support the ministries of St. Andrew. So we're in a really good place from a giving perspective. I can say the same on the expense side. And that was really a combination, I think, of two different factors. One is very disciplined expense management across the board in every area of St. Andrew. You can rest assured, and we watch it very carefully, we're careful with how all of your giving is spent on all the different programs. Couple that with the fact that we also benefited from some of the government relief programs that were put in place. In fact, in 2021, we secured about $550,000 in loans from the federal government, and we just got word they've been completely forgiven. So we do not have to pay that back. And again, they did that so we could keep our people on staff. We could keep paying people. We didn't have to lay anyone off. We can continue to support the ministries of St. Andrew even during these unprecedented COVID times. So again, just very, very happy that we've been able to do that. So at a high level, we're in a good place. We're in a good place as we look to round out 2021. Let me just take another minute and touch on the actual Treasurer's Report, because I think it is important that our members understand kind of how we assess our financial situation. And it starts with what we call the local fund. So within the local fund, that's the majority of the expenditures for St. Andrew. So think about staff and administrative expenses. All of our building and property expenses are within that. All of our ministry programs are primarily in that. Our Benevolence program is in that local fund. So that is the biggest kind of fund within St. Andrew, and we spend a lot of time, again, analyzing the financial condition of what we call the local fund. But in addition, St. Andrew runs a very substantial early learning program, childcare and preschool. This is, I would call it a relatively self-sustaining $1.3 million program at St. Andrew. So we spend a lot of time, again, ensuring, do we have the right rates? Are we charging the right? Are we staffed appropriately? Are we following all the regulatory requirements of having an early learning program, within the confines of St. Andrew? And of course, we've got to talk about Spirit in the Pines. Again, our camp program, it's had its challenges of late with COVID, but as most all of you know, this has been a phenomenal ministry of St. Andrew, and again, one that we look at separately financially from the other programs of St. Andrew. We follow that closely. Again, are we charging the right amount for camp attendees? Are we covering our expenses the right way within camp? And then the other is, I'll kind of put this in what I'll call restricted funds. So we actually have a number of restricted funds at St. Andrew. Think about things like the Benevolence Fund, the Endowment Fund I'm going to touch on in a minute. We've got a Haiti Fund, Prayer Garden. Church Anew is now in that kind of restricted fund category as well. So that's another segment of our fund structure that the finance team works with Pastor Gail and Maggie and staff on, again, ensuring that we're managing all those different programs in the most appropriate manner possible. So budgeting, again, we're kicking that program off right now. And just to give you kind of a high-level concept of what this is, it really starts again with these department heads at St. Andrew putting together what their recommendation is for their 2022 budgets. That's then consolidated, and we review that against what we're projecting from a giving perspective. Again, our goal is to make sure we're covering all of our expenses through our giving or other receipts that are being driven by the different programs as well. So you'll be seeing a lot more information on this as we move towards the annual meeting, but know that there is a fair amount of governance going into that overall process in support of staff and the pastors at St. Andrew. All right, make sure there's time because it's really important. We also talk about how do we give back to our communities at St. Andrew. So I'm going to touch on the first one, and then Matt's going to cover the second. A little bit on the St. Andrew Mission Endowment Fund. So a little bit of history. This fund actually started in January of 2013. It was primarily funded by the sale of St. Andrew West. So at that time, we were very fortunate in being able to secure a very attractive price for that, and had some hard decisions to make about what do we do with the funds. We decided to put a portion of them into a perpetual fund, an endowment fund that would be in place for perpetuity to support the needs globally and locally, where people could come forward or organizations request a grant to support different efforts that they have, kind of outside of, again, benevolence, outside of our normal ministry programs at St. Andrew to do that. And so from relatively humble beginnings, and thanks to a pretty strong stock market over the last 8 years, our fund balance now is about $570,000. So there's actually a committee that is put together that oversees this. We meet on a quarterly basis to review the performance of the fund. We also look through the different grant requests. We work very closely in partnership with Pastor Peter and with Pastor Gail in this program to look at where should we, and we again try and target around 5% of the total amount of the endowment fund to be provided as grants to worthwhile organizations that come forward and make those requests. So again, we go through that process. Sometimes we've got a lot of grants to talk about, sometimes not that many, and we have some really healthy debate on what makes sense, what should we fund, at what level should we fund it. And maybe last, just a couple of the I think really interesting grants that we've requested over the recent years. We've found a way to be very supportive of Lutheran ministry and missionary expansion in Africa. One of the most fascinating was pastors have a hard time getting out to their congregations. They're spread far apart, the roads are bad, and so we actually funded the purchase of mini-cycle bikes so they could get out to their members to spread the word. I mean, I think just a phenomenal program, and it's really been fun to get the feedback and pictures of what's happened. Same with helping just then build simple church structures. Get a roof instead of a grass roof on a church in Africa. So thinking about that from kind of a global perspective, but even locally, we've done some really interesting things to support some local food shelf programs, some unique ministry efforts, and another that we just funded was work on healing the community in South Minneapolis. As a result of what happened with George Floyd, we are supporting some different programs that you're going to be learning more about that we're really excited to be part of. Again, a healing process in our community. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt.
I'll make sure this is on. Thanks for having me, everybody. I'll introduce myself really quickly before I go into the Benevolence Fund. My name is Matt Gribben. I'm a current member of the council in my third and final year. I grew up at St. Andrew. I was baptized here a long time ago. And after coming back from college, I got involved again, pretty involved with the youth ministries at Spirit in the Pines, and more recently with the young adults team and helping with that programming. So I'm happy to be here tonight and talk about another thing I'm involved in, the Benevolence Fund. So a little bit of background on that. As Steve had mentioned, the Benevolence Fund is a restricted fund in, I have a slide. Yeah. So the Benevolence Fund, it's a restricted fund within St. Andrew's local fund. So all the money is allocated on an annual basis when we do the normal budgeting process. A little bit different from the Endowment Fund in that the goal of the Benevolence Fund is to distribute all of the assets that it's allocated in a calendar year. So the goal is to try and get the money out there, get it in the community, and make a difference now. So the funds are intended to be used for programs and ministries in and outside of the church that will, push people to grow in their faith or maybe have a focus on service or giving. So there is a committee that oversees the fund that will take in the grant applications. That's made up of 6 members and then 1 council member, me serving as the council member right now. The other team members are Steve Lutz, Josh Henniger, Mary Hansen, Kathy Romanzi, Luke Nelson, and Beth Kaluza. So we gather, about 4 times a year, once a quarter, to review grant applications. Sometimes more than that, depending on how many applications we have to review. But we take some time on our own to review each application and then come together to discuss. We want to make sure that it follows the mission of St. Andrew and also the Benevolence Fund. And we also want to do our due diligence to make sure that, where the funds are going is a trustworthy organization and, a reputable source. So we take time to review each application. A few examples of recent grants. Part of the fund is consistently allocated for seminary students. So we support seminary students as they take on this big challenge and this endeavor in their life. So that takes up, we commit about 15% of the funds to that. and we try to support one a year. Other projects that we've supported in the past, the Seeds for Support, the missions in Haiti, we've supported that program over the years. And more recently, some that I'm excited about was back in January, we supported the Stubb Hall homeless shelter. And so that was a temporary homeless shelter that was put up in Luther Seminary, right, in one of their dorm halls. So people who are experiencing homelessness could come and have a place to stay. And actually the congregation supported it as well by putting together welcome bags. And so the Benevolence Fund used some of their resources to provide gift cards for the individuals to use to buy the goods that they need. Other projects would be Habitat for Humanity. We supported 3 days of work out in, I believe, Chaska over the summer, and as well as Onward Eden Prairie, which is another organization that supports young women who are experiencing homelessness and getting them the resources they need, not only to get back on their feet, but succeed in the long run. So those are just a few projects and ministries that we've supported this year. Encourage everyone to put in an application. We still have another meeting this year and more funds to get out into the community.
So at this point, we will stop. We've had some great information shared, a lot of information shared, but we do expect that some of you have a few questions as well. We have perhaps some questions from people that are online, and I'll expect you as well. Maggie Dede has a microphone, so if you have a question, I'd like you, if you would, to raise your hand so Maggie can come over with the microphone and we can hear them. I'll just ask Sandy, do we have any online questions? Okay, great. Open it up. Does anybody have any questions here that you would like to ask any of these fine folks?
What is the budget for
Maggie, you want to catch? Yeah.
What is the budget for Spirit in the Pines?
So from a budget perspective for 2021, we were expecting receipts of about $550,000. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we were not able to achieve that number, and so we looked hard at expenses and tried to reduce all the variable expenses we could. There's just a certain number of fixed costs that we were not able to cover. And so we're going to spend a lot of time as we look at the 2022 budgeting process to ensure that, again, we've got the right kind of financial structure in place.
So what are the costs? How much are the costs?
So the costs are, we target basically to have the receipts cover the costs. So it's roughly $500,000 of cost. A lot of that is staff, but there's also a fair number of kind of property and related expenses as well.
Others? All right. Well, we want to thank you very much for coming. We hope we've been able to share a little bit with you about how St. Andrew is doing and looking forward to 2022 as we begin a whole new process of budgeting. We are grateful for these leaders and for those who have taken the time tonight to hear the story and also to share the story. So with that, I'll say thank you, and maybe we'll close with a prayer. Good and gracious God, we give you thanks for this time tonight to be able to hear what is happening at St. Andrew, hear the good news, and to learn more about the opportunities that are still ahead of us. Sometimes things that are on our plate and some things that we have been able to move off our plate. But thanks to the generosity of this congregation and the good stewards that we have on the staff and other places, we're grateful that we'll be able to do the ministries that we are called to do. Bless each and every person around the table and in our audience today, and send us off to do your good work in the world. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you, and good night.